Ranking Member Cantwell, I very much appreciate the opportunity to testify this morning. I appreciate, Madam Chair, in particular, your leadership on this issue in terms of the oversight and moving forward on ways to improve ANILCA. I'm also, as you mentioned, honored to be here with so many distinguished fellow Alaskans, Senator Coghill, the governor, many others, Rod Arno. I think you'll hear a common theme from all of them. I haven't looked at their testimony, but I think one common theme is going to be no more means no more. And Madam Chair, you talked about how we've done our part, what ANILCA did in terms of setting aside 106 million acres. I mean, I'd like to add to that in terms of what Alaska presents for the country. 70% of National Park Service lands, 80% of all wildlife refuge lands, 53% of wilderness lands, the number 2 and number 1 largest national forests, all are in our state. As you said, we've done our part. You also mentioned that the no more clause is in ANILCA, and you mentioned Section 101D, but as you know, Madam Chair, there are other provisions of ANILCA that talk to the no more clause. Let me provide a couple other examples. Section 1326 says, quote, no further studies of the federal lands in the state of Alaska for the single purpose of considering the establishment of a conservation system unit, national recreation area, national conservation unit, or for related or similar purposes shall be conducted unless authorized by a further act of Congress. That's in the law. Another part of the law, quote, no further executive branch action which withdraws more than 5,000 acres in the aggregate of public lands within the state of Alaska shall be effective without an affirmative vote of Congress. The law is the law. That is the no more clause. What has happened since? Broken promises after broken promises. As you mentioned, that was the key compromise. Year after year, radical outside environmental groups and their allies pushed for more ways to lock up Alaska. And the Obama administration in particular has readily and consistently attempted to eviscerate and ignore ANILCA's no more clause. As you mentioned, Madam Chair, 40 million acres attempted under this administration to withdraw. The President recently announced he was ordering his agencies to manage 12 million acres of ANWR as wilderness. That's not allowed under the law. He also restricted access, as you mentioned, to 50% of the National Petroleum Reserve of Alaska. Again, not allowed under ANILCA. His Wildlands Initiative early in the administration was a blatant attempt to lock up more land in Alaska in violation of ANILCA. As you know, there has been regulation after regulation to limit access and ability for Alaskans to practice hunting, trapping, fishing, activities that literally put food on the table of Alaskans. Likewise, our miners continually fight for access to our lands. And I think it's important to remember they're our lands. They're not the Department of Interior's or BLM's. We, the people, own these lands. Most recently, as you mentioned, a moose hunter from Alaska has had to resort to spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a lawsuit which will be heard by the U.S. Supreme Court next month to try to force the federal government to keep the promise that was made in the plain text of ANILCA. And we wonder why Congress and the federal government have such low approval ratings. When it comes to ANILCA, the federal government is a serial cheater. Everywhere I go in Alaska, people come up to me to tell me that the lands that should be theirs under ANILCA are being blocked. I believe that's just wrong. There's a better way. The federal government and the executive branch should keep its word. I know that this committee will be looking at all recommendations to help make the promise and compromise of ANILCA the opportunity that it should be for all Alaskans. Thank you, Madam Chair.